Good evening, all, and welcome back to Dark Fears. Tonight, we venture into the chilling depths of Canadian darkness, where 7 true stories of terror, mystery, and unfathomable loss have haunted the nation for decades. From the forests that swallow the innocent to the neighbors who harbor unimaginable secrets, these are the accounts that shattered lives and left communities scarred with unanswered questions. Each story represents a real person, a real tragedy, and the persistent grip of unexplained horror that refuses to fade from memory. These are not tales of fiction or embellishment, but verified accounts of the darkness that exists within our borders, waiting in the shadows of everyday life. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Fears for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of the Canadian deep woods and urban streets alike, where civilization ends and terror begins. My name is Evan Mercer, and what happened to me in the winter of 2019 still keeps me awake every night. I grew up in a quiet logging town in northern British Columbia. Population 612. A place where everyone knew everyone, where the only real danger was a drunk snowmobiler or a hungry black bear wandering too close to the dumpsters. But that winter, something else came. I was working night shifts for the municipal road crew. My job was simple: clear the snow from the old service road that connected our town to the abandoned mill. Hardly anyone used it anymore, but the mayor insisted we keep it open in case of emergency. On the night everything started, the air was so cold it felt like glass. My truck headlights cut through the falling snow, carving 2 narrow tunnels of visibility. There wasn't another vehicle on the road, no cabins, no streetlights, just endless forest pressing in from both sides. About 30 minutes into the shift, my radio picked up something, static at first, then a faint voice. It sounded like a woman whispering, "Don't stop." Very soft, almost a breath. I froze. No one else was on this channel. Then the whisper came again, clearer this time. "Evan, don't stop." My name. No one should have known I was out there. A mile ahead, I saw something standing in the middle of the road, something tall, completely still, waiting for me, and I made the mistake of slowing down. As my truck crawled closer, the figure didn't move, not an inch. At first, I thought it might be a moose or maybe some drunk hunter stumbling across the road. But the shape was wrong. It was too straight, too narrow, too human. And yet, something about its outline felt distorted, like a shadow cast by the wrong kind of light. I stopped about 20 feet away, the windshield fogged with my breath as I stared at it, trying to understand what I was seeing. The figure seemed to flicker slightly, as if the snowfall passed through it instead of around it. I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I've got someone on the service road, possibly injured or..." The radio cut out. No static, no voice, just silence. That's when the figure tilted its head, slowly, almost curiously, like it was studying me. I felt my stomach drop. Something primal inside me whispered to back up, to turn around, to get away from it. Instead, I cracked the window an inch. "Hey, you all right?" The figure didn't answer, but I swear I heard something shift behind me in the trees, like footsteps crunching in the snow. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I looked away for half a second. When I looked back, the figure was gone. Not walking, not running, just gone. And then, from the right side of the tree line, I heard my father's voice whisper, "Evan, come here." My father died in 2012. My father's voice froze every muscle in my body. It wasn't similar or kind of like him. It was him, the same raspy warmth, the same tone he used when calling me inside as a kid. But the direction of the voice was wrong. Too close, too clear, like he was standing right behind the tree trunk only a few feet away. I rolled the window up fast and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely keep them on the steering wheel. I scanned the tree line, trying to see movement, a shape, anything. The snow muffled everything, swallowing sound, isolating me in a cocoon of white and panic. I forced myself to breathe and slammed the truck into reverse. But when I looked into the rearview mirror, a man stood directly behind my truck, not 5 feet away. His skin looked grayish under the brake lights, and his clothes were soaked through with melting snow. But what terrified me most wasn't his appearance. It was his face. He didn't have one. No eyes, no mouth. Just smooth, pale skin stretched where features should be. And yet, I heard him speak inside my head, in my father's voice. "Come here, son," I screamed, floored the gas, and the truck jerked forward, wheels spinning wildly on the ice. Somehow, I managed to control it, racing blindly down the road. But the voice didn't fade. It followed. I drove faster than I ever had on that narrow service road. Snow sprayed up in sheets around the truck, blurring the world into streaks of white and black. But no matter how far I got, I kept hearing my father's voice in my head, warm, calm, coaxing. "Stop the truck, Evan. It's okay now." I tried to drown it out. I blasted the radio, slapped my own face, shouted at myself. The voice didn't fade. It didn't even strain. It spoke as if it were sitting in the passenger seat. Then something else happened. The temperature inside the truck dropped so fast, my breath fogged thick and white. Frost began creeping across the inside of the windshield like spreading veins. My fingertips went numb, even though the heater was on max. That's when I noticed the headlights dimming, like something heavy was pressing down on the top of the truck. The metal above me let out a long, low creak. I didn't dare look up. The road bent sharply ahead. If I didn't slow down, I'd slam into the ravine. But when I tried to brake, the pedal wouldn't move. It felt jammed, frozen in place. The truck kept accelerating. Through the thinning fog on the windshield, I saw another figure standing at the bend. Same height, same posture, same faceless head. It raised its arm slowly, pointing toward me, beckoning me forward. The figure's gesture was unmistakable, almost gentle, like it was guiding me into the turn that would kill me. My instincts screamed louder than the engine. I yanked the steering wheel hard to the left, fighting the frozen brake pedal, fighting the pull of that whispering voice in my skull. The truck fishtailed violently and nearly spun out. One wheel caught the edge of the road. Snow and ice sprayed in all directions. Somehow, through pure panic and luck, the truck slammed sideways into a snowbank instead of going over the ravine. The impact knocked the air out of my lungs. My head hit the window, stars bursting across my vision. The engine sputtered, then died. Silence swallowed everything. For a moment, all I could hear was my heartbeat. Then crunch, soft, deliberate footsteps in the snow. I forced myself upright, vision still blurry. I wiped the fog from the windshield with my sleeve. Something moved just outside the passenger side. A tall, pale shape gliding between the trees, so smooth it didn't disturb a single branch. I ducked down instinctively, swallowing hard, trying not to make a sound. More footsteps. Closer now. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Against every instinct, I pulled it out. One new text message. No number, no contact name, just a single line. "I'm cold. Let me inside." My stomach dropped. The message had been sent from my father's old phone number, a number that had been disconnected for 7 years. The urge to run battled the urge to hide. but neither option felt survivable. I stayed crouched in the dark cab, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. My father's number couldn't have texted me. That alone should have been enough to send me into a full panic. But what happened next ripped away any doubt that something unnatural was happening. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "I see you." A shadow passed directly in front of the windshield. I held my breath. The figure didn't walk like a person. It moved in unsettling, drifting motions, like it floated an inch above the ground. Every so often it would pause, tilting its head in that unnatural bird-like way. My father had died of a heart attack in his workshop. He wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or anything paranormal. But right now, every memory of him, every laugh, every lesson, clashed violently with the imitation outside. A soft knock tapped against the passenger window. Once, twice, 3 times. Slow, intentional. I forced myself to look, but what stared back, or tried to, wasn't human. The faceless head pressed against the glass, frost forming where its skin touched. Then, impossibly, a mouth began to form in the blank skin, slowly stretching, shaping into a widening grin. And through that newly forming slit, my father's voice whispered from inches away. "Let me in, Evan." I screamed. My instinct kicked in. I lunged across the cab, slammed my shoulder into the driver's door, and stumbled out into the freezing air. My boots hit the snow hard, nearly sliding out from beneath me. Wind howled through the trees, carrying faint echoes of my father's voice. Too many voices, overlapping, out of sync. The figure reacted instantly. It jerked away from the window, its head snapping toward me with violent precision. I didn't wait to see more. I bolted toward the tree line, the only cover I had, praying I wasn't running into another one. The forest swallowed me fast. Branches whipped my face, snow fell in clumps from shaking limbs, and the world became a maze of white and shadow. Behind me, I heard something moving, smooth, rapid, gliding, not running, following. I tripped over a fallen log and crashed into the snow. Pain shot through my knee, but I bit back a cry. I scrambled behind the trunk and forced myself to go still. The sound stopped. The forest went dead silent. Then, a voice drifted through the trees. But this one wasn't my father. It was my own voice. "Evan, why are you hiding?" The words echoed unnaturally, like multiple versions of me were speaking at once. I felt my throat close. My breath fogged rapidly in the freezing air, giving away my location. The thing was mimicking me now, and it was getting closer. I couldn't stay hidden. The thing imitating my voice drifted through the woods with unnatural precision. Every few seconds, it spoke again, always in my voice, but with a slight distortion, like an old recording played backward. "Come out, Evan. You can't hide from yourself." Branches cracked somewhere to my left. I moved right, keeping low, crawling through the snow even though my hands were numb to the bone. The forest was disorienting. Every tree looked the same, every shadow seemed alive. I had no idea where the service road was anymore. My only thought was distance. Get away. Keep moving. Then I saw it. A faint orange glow flickering between the trees. A cabin? A campfire? My frozen brain didn't care. Any sign of human presence was hope. I pushed toward it, stumbling, half falling. As I got closer, the glow grew stronger. Flames, a fire pit, and next to it, footprints, human footprints. A wave of relief hit me so hard I nearly cried. Someone else was out here, someone real. I stepped into the small clearing. The fire was burning, but no one was around. The footprints ended abruptly on the opposite side, like the person had vanished mid-step. Before I could react, the fire flickered unnaturally and elongated. A shadow rose from the flames, a tall, thin, faceless silhouette. It had been waiting for me. I stumbled backward, slipping in the snow as the shadow unfurled from the fire, like smoke taking form. It towered over me, its limbs long and jagged, its body flickering between solid and transparent, as if reality couldn't fully contain it. The fire dimmed to embers, extinguished almost instantly as the creature stepped forward, its movements silent, impossibly smooth. I scrambled away, my hands burning from the cold, my breath ripping in short, panicked bursts. "Evan!" This time, the voice wasn't my father's. It wasn't mine. It was layered. Hundreds of voices, thousands, all whispering my name in perfect unison. I ran, branches tore at my jacket. Snow collapsed around my legs, the forest blurred into streaks of black and white. Behind me, the whispering grew louder, rising into a crescendo of voices, all calling me home. Somehow, by pure dumb luck or instinct, I saw headlights cutting through the trees. A plow truck, one of ours. I burst out of the forest onto the service road, waving my arms wildly. The truck screeched to a stop, and the driver, Mark, my crew supervisor, threw the door open. "Jesus, Evan, what the hell happened to you?" I tried to speak, but only managed a choked sob. He hauled me inside and slammed the door shut. The forest behind us went silent, completely silent. Then, just before Mark hit the gas, something stepped out onto the road. Not the shadow, not the faceless figure. My father, smiling. Mark didn't see him. He only saw my reaction, me screaming, clawing at the dashboard, begging him to drive. And to his credit, he didn't hesitate. The truck tore down the road, bouncing over ice and ruts as I kept my eyes locked on the rear window. The figure, my father's impossible shape, didn't chase us. It simply watched. As the distance grew, its smile widened slowly, impossibly, until the face split from ear to ear. And then, just like before, it vanished. I collapsed into the seat, sobbing uncontrollably. Mark tried to ask questions, but I couldn't form a coherent sentence. Not until we reached town. Not until I saw real lights, real buildings, real people. When I finally explained everything, Mark looked pale but didn't call me crazy. He just shook his head and said one thing. "You're not the first person to see something on that road." The town council closed the service road permanently a week later. Too many incidents, too many disappearances. My truck was found the next morning. The entire cab was frozen solid from the inside, windshield covered in frost patterns that looked almost like faces. I moved south a month later, but sometimes, on cold nights, I still get text messages from my father's old number. The last one came 2 weeks ago. "You didn't let me inside." I blocked the number, but something tells me it wasn't texting me from a phone. My name is Lena Parker, and I grew up in northern British Columbia. One of those quiet regions where the winters feel endless and the lakes freeze so solid you could park a truck on them. I've always loved the cold, loved the silence, loved the way the world softens under a layer of snow. But the place I'm about to tell you about, Wolf Lake, cured me of that love forever. I was 19 when it happened. I worked seasonal maintenance at a provincial park near the lake. December had rolled in early that year, and the water froze weeks ahead of schedule. Locals said it was the coldest early winter they'd seen in decades. I didn't think anything of it, until the day I noticed something beneath the ice. It was early morning. I was clearing snow from the walking trail near the lake edge when sunlight hit the surface just right. Something dark and rectangular reflected through the ice. At first, I thought it was a log. But logs don't have windows. I got closer. My breath fogged the air. The surface beneath me looked wrong, sunken, almost hollow. There was a house under the lake. Not a foundation, not debris. A full wooden house, roof intact, porch visible, windows staring up like black eyes from the frozen depths. And then, something moved behind one of the windows. Something pale. I stumbled back so fast, I slipped on the ice. That was the moment my nightmare began. I couldn't convince myself to go near the lake again for a few hours. The image wouldn't leave my mind. Those windows, the pale shape drifting behind them, like someone wandering through a flooded hallway. Eventually, though, curiosity overpowered fear. I needed to know what I saw. I needed to prove to myself it was just debris or a reflection or anything normal. By noon, I returned, pretending to continue clearing snow from the shoreline. My boots crunched through the icy crust as I approached the edge. The wind whipped off the lake, carrying an unnatural chill, a sharp cold that felt older than the air around it. This time, the submerged house was clearer. The roof tiles were warped, the wood darkened by age and water. The old porch railing leaned as if crushed by pressure. But the windows, those black rectangles, remained intact. Too intact. Like the lake protected the structure rather than destroyed it. I crouched low, trying to see deeper. That's when I noticed something new. Footprints on the frozen surface. Bare footprints. They trailed from the tree line straight toward the darkest part of the lake, then stopped abruptly at the edge of the submerged house's roof. No snow filled them. No ice glazed over them. They were fresh. A shiver ran up my spine. Someone had walked across the ice barefoot in sub-zero temperature. No sane person could do that and remain alive. When I looked back down, something stared up at me. A face, pressed against the inside of the window. I fell backwards so fast, I nearly tumbled into a drift. The face below the ice was impossible to interpret. Bloated, colorless, distorted by water and depth. But the eyes were what froze me. They weren't clouded like a corpse's. They were focused, aware, watching me with unnerving stillness. When I dared another look, the face was gone. Just an empty black window. I should have left. I should have reported it immediately. But something in me, morbid curiosity, stubbornness, maybe stupidity, kept me there. I stepped closer, tapping the ice with my glove, half expecting something to tap back. Nothing happened. So I convinced myself I imagined the face, a trick of light, a reflection of my own. Later that afternoon, my co-worker Jonah found me pacing near the shore. He asked what was wrong, and I laughed it off, telling him I thought I'd seen a cabin frozen under the lake. I expected him to tease me. Instead, he went silent. "You saw it too?" he asked. My stomach dropped. I asked him what he meant, but he just stared at the lake like it offended him. "Don't go near it again, Lena. People don't come back the same when they stare too long." Before I could ask more, he walked away, leaving me alone with a silence heavier than the snow around me. That night, the noises began. Soft tapping on my cabin window. 2 slow taps. Pause. 2 more. The same rhythm I had tapped on the ice. I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, I heard that tapping again. Light but deliberate, like fingers drumming on glass. By morning, I was exhausted and on edge. I forced myself to focus on work, but my hands shook too badly to even hold a shovel properly. Jonah didn't come in that day. When our supervisor radioed his cabin, there was no answer. Someone was sent to check on him, but the cabin door was locked, lights off, no tracks leading away. It was as if he'd simply vanished overnight. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling the lake had something to do with it. I walked to the shoreline again, unable to resist its pull. The ice crackled beneath my boots as if warning me away. I stopped about 10 feet from the place where the house roof sloped just beneath the surface. Something new was exposed, scratches on the underside of the ice. Long, desperate drag marks. Not from an animal, from hands. Human hands. They dragged from the black window upward, as if someone had tried climbing toward the surface, then been pulled back down. I swallowed hard, breath trembling. That's when I saw it. A shadow. Moving through the submerged hallway of the house, slow, wandering, searching. And then it turned, toward the surface, toward me. I ran. I didn't look back. But the tapping returned that night. Louder, more insistent. By the third night, I couldn't pretend it was my imagination anymore. The tapping at my window grew rhythmic, intentional, almost impatient. Sometimes it came with a faint scraping, like nails dragging across wood. I kept the curtains shut, too afraid to look outside. But fear alone wasn't enough to keep me indoors. I needed answers, and I wasn't the only one. The next morning, one of the park rangers, Elise, approached me quietly. "You've seen it, haven't you?" she whispered. I didn't ask what she meant. We both knew. Elise told me the lake hadn't always been a lake. Decades ago, a small settlement stood there, a cluster of homes belonging to a family commune that isolated themselves from the nearby town. One winter, during a sudden thaw and refreeze, the ground collapsed, and the entire settlement sank into a cavernous underground channel. The lake formed over it. All of them drowned, she said. But some locals believe the cold preserved more than bodies. I felt sick. I asked her if Jonah knew. Her expression darkened. Jonah's brother disappeared here 10 years ago. Found staring at the ice, whispering someone's name. My skin prickled. What name? Elisa. Her own name. We decided to investigate together, but Elise insisted we wait until sunset, saying the lake was most active in the dark, which made no sense but chilled me to the bone. Before we parted, she grabbed my arm. "If anything touches the ice from below," she warned, "don't look at its face." That night, I didn't listen. The sky bled into shades of purple and blue as Elise and I approached Wolf Lake with flashlights and ropes. The wind carved patterns across the snow, whistling like distant voices. Elise moved as if she'd done this before. Careful, slow, always keeping her eyes slightly averted from the ice. "Don't stare into the windows," she whispered. They stare back. The submerged house was clearer than ever. The ice around it looked thinner, glass-like, almost transparent. Our flashlight beams reached deep inside the structure, illuminating chairs, tables, a staircase leading to darkness. Then something drifted into view. A pale figure, human-shaped but wrong. Its limbs hung loosely, swaying like it moved with the underwater current. Its head tilted slowly upward. Elise grabbed my arm. "Don't look at its face, Lena." But curiosity won again. I looked. The thing had no expression, but the lack of one was worse than any emotion. Its skin looked preserved but water-warped. Its eyes wide and impossibly open, its mouth frozen mid-scream. Its hands pressed gently against the inside of the window, fingertips trailing those same desperate scratch marks. It wasn't floating aimlessly. It was trying to rise, trying to reach us. When it slammed its hands upward against the ice, Elise yanked me back, nearly knocking me over. Cracks spiderwebbed outward with a sound like breaking bones. "We need to go," she hissed. But something else stirred beneath the house. Multiple shapes. Moving upward, we backed away from the cracking ice. But the shapes below moved with unsettling coordination, slow, rising, drifting upward like pale balloons caught in a current. 1, 2, 3, 4. Their arms stretched upward, hands brushing the underside of the ice as if greeting us. Elise cursed under her breath. They're awake. One of the shapes reached the thinnest section of ice directly beneath me. Its face pressed upward, distorted by both water and the pressure of rising. I stumbled back, heart racing. Its mouth began to move. Not screaming, speaking. I couldn't hear it, but the shape's lips formed syllables with terrifying precision. Then, as if carried through the silence itself, I felt the sound more than heard it. It whispered my name. Not Lena, my full name. Lena Parker. My blood ran cold. I turned to Elise, asking how it knew who I was, but she didn't answer. She just stared at the shapes with a look of dread I'd never seen before. "Elise," I said softly, "why did you really bring me out here?" She swallowed hard and stepped back from me. Because once they see you, they don't stop. Before I could react, the largest crack in the ice exploded outward. Water surged up through the break in a violent spray, and something pale and thin erupted from the depths. A hand, grasping, reaching for me. I screamed and dove backward as the hand clawed through the opening. Water poured onto the surface in waves, freezing as it splashed across the ice. Elise grabbed my jacket, hauling me to my feet as more pale fingers pushed through the widening crack. "Run!" she shouted. We sprinted across the lake, our boots slipping as the surface groaned beneath us. Behind us, the hole widened with sickening speed. Bodies, not corpses, not quite, pulled themselves upward, emerging in twitching, jerking movements. Their limbs bent strangely, like joints no longer worked as they should. One of them let out a sound, not a moan, not a scream, a bubbling imitation of a laugh. My lungs burned as we reached the shoreline. Elise didn't look back, but I did. The figures were standing on the ice now, dripping lake water. Their eyes were locked on me, empty, wide, unblinking. One of them stepped forward. The ice didn't crack beneath its feet. It moved as if weightless. More emerged behind them. Dozens. I grabbed Elise's arm. "We have to go. Now!" But she wasn't looking at the lake anymore. She was staring at something in the snow near our cabin path. Bare footprints. Fresh ones. They led from the lake toward my cabin. The tapping I'd heard wasn't from something outside. It had been inside the walls, waiting, watching. Elise dragged me toward the cabins, but my legs felt like lead. Each breath cut my throat with icy pain. The bare footprints grew clearer as we approached. Small, delicate, almost childlike. They wove between cabins, circling mine repeatedly, like something had been pacing. When we reached my cabin door, Elise raised her flashlight, and the beam hit scratches along the wood. Long, thin scratch marks. The same pattern I'd seen beneath the ice. "Elise," I whispered. "It was here." She didn't answer. She pushed open the door slowly. The inside of my cabin was freezing, colder than outside. Frost coated the walls from the inside out. My blankets were thrown to the floor, my belongings scattered as if someone had searched everything. The air smelled different too. Stagnant, wet, metallic. Elise stepped over to the window, wiping away frost with her sleeve. "Lena, look." I reluctantly approached. At first, I didn't see anything, just the dark tree line and swirling snow. Then something shifted. A figure stood between the pines. Not one of the drowned ones. Not Elise. Something else. It was me. Same coat, same hair, same stance. A perfect reflection of me standing in the woods, staring at the cabin. But it didn't mimic my movements. When I raised my hand, it didn't. When I stepped back, it tilted its head, watching me with animal curiosity. "That's not you," Elise whispered. The double took one slow step toward the cabin, and every drowned figure on the lake turned toward it simultaneously. My knees almost gave out. My own face staring back at me from the tree line was far more terrifying than anything beneath the ice. The doppelganger took another step toward us, moving with a slow, unnatural precision, like it was learning how to walk. Elise pulled me away from the window. "Listen to me," she whispered. "It wants to replace you. They all do. That lake doesn't just drown people. It keeps them." My heart hammered. What do we do? She swallowed hard. "We survive. We run." Before either of us could move, the tapping started again. But this time, it came from every wall of the cabin. Dozens of hands. Dozens of bodies brushing against the outside, circling us. The drowned figures had reached the tree line. The doppelganger smiled. An awful, too wide smile that split the frozen skin of its face. Then it opened its mouth and a flood of lake water poured out, soaking the snow at its feet. The cabin lights flickered. The walls creaked. And then, all at once, the sound stopped. Silence. I don't remember much after that. Elise and I ran. We didn't stop until we reached the highway, where a passing truck finally picked us up. Wolf Lake was closed off weeks later. Officially unstable ice conditions. Unofficially. Something walked out of that lake. And sometimes, when the cold hits just right, I still hear tapping on my walls. My name is Caleb Morin, and I've lived my whole life in a tiny town outside Thunder Bay. We're used to rough winters, the kind where the snow piles up taller than your truck and the wind sounds like it's screaming through the pines. But the winter of 2017 wasn't normal. It was the coldest I'd ever seen. And the first time I learned that snow can watch you back. I was working nights at a small wildlife observation cabin deep in Crown Land. The cabin was used to track wolves, lynx, and the occasional cougar. Nothing supernatural, nothing strange. Just animals doing what animals do. At least, that's what I thought. One night, during a brutal blizzard, the power flickered 3 times, then died completely. I lit my lantern, wrapped my coat tighter, and went to the front window to check the generator shack. I couldn't see more than a few feet through the blowing snow. But as the lantern light reflected off the window, I noticed something outside. A shape. A tall, thin figure standing perfectly still in the whiteout. At first, I thought it was a tree trunk, but the longer I stared, the more I realized the outline had no branches, no texture, no natural form. Just a long, smooth silhouette, almost sculpted out of snow itself. Then it moved, just slightly, just enough to show it wasn't part of the forest. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding, because the figure stepped forward too, mirroring me. I couldn't tear my eyes away. The snow figure didn't just mimic me. It moved deliberately, matching my every step. A chill ran down my spine, deeper than the wind could reach. I swallowed hard and whispered, "This isn't real. It can't be real." But even as I said it, I knew it was. I grabbed my binoculars, hoping for a better look. Through the blizzard, the shape sharpened slightly. Its body seemed almost translucent, glinting like packed ice. Yet it had a distinctly humanoid form. The more I studied it, the more I noticed it didn't leave footprints, not a single one. The snow around it remained perfectly undisturbed, as if the figure floated just above the ground. My heart was racing, my hands trembling. I considered calling my supervisor or even 911, but the storm was so bad, no one could reach me. I was completely alone. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, or maybe it was the wind playing tricks. The figure tilted its head ever so slightly, as though listening. I froze. My instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear and fascination. Before I could react further, the figure lifted an arm, slowly, almost gracefully. Then, without warning, it pointed directly at me. The snow around it shifted subtly, forming a vague outline of a face, featureless, except for 2 black holes where eyes should have been. I stumbled back, almost knocking over the lantern. The blizzard seemed to intensify, howling around the cabin as if responding to the figure's movement. I ran to the back of the cabin and slammed the door, fumbling for the lock. My mind was racing, logic clashing with raw terror. The whispering grew louder, or maybe I was imagining it, repeating the faint syllables of a voice that wasn't human. My eyes darted to the windows. The snow figure had moved, closer, just outside the front window now. Silent, still, and impossibly patient. I grabbed my coat and flashlight, considering my options. The generator was useless. The storm had knocked out power hours ago. I had no radio, no way to call anyone. I had only one choice. Get to my truck parked a few hundred meters down the snow-packed trail. I didn't care if the snow figure followed me. I had to survive. The moment I opened the cabin door, the blizzard felt heavier, as if it resisted my escape. The snow figure hovered, not walking, not running, but gliding with impossible smoothness across the surface. I froze for a second, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Its face, featureless yet vaguely humanoid, tilted toward me. I swear I saw it smile, a cruel, unnatural curve in the snow. I bolted, lungs burning, heart hammering. Each step was agony through the deep snow, but I didn't dare look back. Or maybe I couldn't. The sound of crunching snow behind me matched my own steps, but the figure made no sound. It was everywhere and nowhere, gliding silently. By the time I reached my truck, the storm seemed to pull back slightly, leaving an eerie stillness. I jumped in, locked the doors, and started the engine, expecting immediate escape. But when I glanced into the rearview mirror, something was sitting in the snow right where I had started, watching me leave. I didn't sleep that night. My truck's heater fought the chill, but the mental cold was far worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the snow figure standing at the cabin, or sometimes at the edge of the tree line, silently watching, waiting. I replayed every detail, the featureless face, the impossible glide, the pointing. Why me? Why here? The next day I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was hypothermia. Maybe hallucinations brought on by exhaustion. But deep down, I knew it wasn't my mind. Snow doesn't watch. Or at least, it shouldn't. I returned to the cabin during daylight. The storm had passed, leaving a pristine white landscape. But when I looked around, I noticed the snow around the cabin was strangely compacted, forming shapes like footprints, but too regular, too deliberate. And then I saw the scratches. Long, parallel grooves carved deep into the ice-laden ground, not human, not animal. Something else had been moving around the cabin while I slept. I debated leaving immediately, but my curiosity and my stubbornness drew me closer to the cabin windows. And there it was, the snow figure, standing just inside the shadow of the pines. perfectly still. Only this time, it wasn't pointing. It raised its arm toward the sky. The snow around it rippled, forming shapes, almost letters, but they made no sense. My heart skipped. That night, back in my truck, I heard it, tapping. Gentle, rhythmic, like tiny fingers on the glass. Not outside, not the wind. It came from within. I realized then. It had followed me. That night, I drove back into town, but sleep refused me. Every shadow outside the truck seemed like the snow figure following me, gliding silently just beyond visibility. I couldn't shake the feeling it was learning, studying me. By morning, I realized the snow outside my truck window had a strange, smooth pattern, almost as if something had passed over it while I slept. There were no footprints, no tracks, just an impression in the snow, like it had walked without weight. I tried to talk to people in town. No one believed me. They laughed, joked, called me paranoid. But deep down, I knew they hadn't seen what I had. That figure wasn't natural. It wasn't human. It wasn't alive in any way I could understand. I returned to the cabin a few days later, convinced I could find clues and finally prove to myself I wasn't losing it. The cabin was untouched. No footprints in the snow, no snow figure outside. Relief washed over me until I saw it inside the cabin. The snow figure had entered. Its body was compacted, dripping cold moisture onto the floorboards. It stood motionless, towering over the furniture. Its face remained featureless, but the faint outline of hollow eyes seemed to pierce me. Then it moved, a slow glide toward the corner where I kept my gear. Its arm extended toward my backpack. I froze. I realized then it had been waiting. Not for me, for what I carried. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. The snow figure moved with terrifying smoothness, circling the cabin like it had always known the space. I grabbed a metal flashlight from the table and held it like a weapon, praying it could keep the creature at bay. It tilted its head again, this time gliding closer to the backpack. Every step it took left no imprint on the wooden floor. No sound, but the soft shifting of snow beneath its body. I realized then it wasn't bound by the natural laws. Gravity, friction, or heat meant nothing to it. Suddenly the lantern flickered. Shadows danced across the walls. I noticed subtle movements, snow swirling unnaturally around the corners, forming distorted faces and hands, almost as if the figure commanded the winter itself. My mind raced. I had to stop it, had to find a way to survive. My hands fumbled through drawers, looking for anything to defend myself. I found a small hunting knife. The figure paused, as if sensing my intent. It raised its featureless head, and I felt a cold, overwhelming presence pressing down on me. My skin crawled. Then it spoke. Not words, but impressions. Images in my mind. Snow falling endlessly, trees bending toward me, the cabin filling with darkness, and me, frozen, buried beneath it. I screamed and lunged at the door. The storm outside had returned. The snow figure glided after me. Silent, patient, it had only just begun. I burst outside into the blizzard, knife useless against the cold and wind. The snow figure followed effortlessly, gliding over deep drifts without leaving footprints. My breath froze instantly, forming clouds that hung in the air. Trees bent unnaturally in the storm, snow whipping around them like fingers reaching for me. I stumbled toward the truck parked a few hundred meters away. Each step felt slower than the last, like the snow itself resisted me. Then I realized the snow around me was moving differently. Tiny shapes, humanoid but distorted, forming and dissolving in the drifts. They weren't shadows, but solid snow constructs. miniature versions of the figure following my every step. The wind carried whispers, not words, just sounds, like the snow was speaking to me. My name, my fears, my memories. I tried to cover my ears but couldn't block it. Finally, I reached the truck. I slammed the door and turned the key. The engine roared to life, heat spilling into the cab. But the windshield showed something that made my stomach drop. There it was. The snow figure, standing directly in front of the truck, unbroken by distance or snow. And surrounding it, dozens of smaller figures, rising from the drifts, forming an army of frozen watchers. I realized in that moment, with absolute clarity, that I couldn't escape. Not through roads, not through towns, not through time. The snow had claimed this land, and now it claimed me. The figure raised an arm, and the wind shifted. I felt the blizzard push inward, compressing space around me, as if the world itself had become snow. I drove forward anyway, and the blizzard became a living thing. Snow whipped violently against the truck windows, hammering like fists. Yet through the storm I could see them. Dozens of figures emerging from drifts, some humanoid, some grotesque variations, all gliding silently, all watching. My headlights didn't seem to illuminate them. They were shadows within the white, impossible and unnerving. I pressed the accelerator to the floor, praying the road would lead me somewhere, anywhere. But the storm wasn't ordinary. The snow seemed alive, moving toward me, compressing, forming walls around the road. I realized then, the snow wasn't just following, it was hurting me. For what purpose, I didn't know, but instinct screamed it wasn't good. My vision blurred from cold and fear. My heart pounded so hard it felt like the entire storm could hear it. The truck skidded over ice, sliding dangerously, yet I couldn't stop. Every time I glanced to the side, the snow figure mirrored me, rising taller than trees, body undulating unnaturally, face still hollow and featureless, eyes voids of infinite cold. Then, the smaller figures closed in. I could see now their faces, tiny, twisted reflections of the snow figure itself. They whispered something I couldn't understand, yet the meaning was clear. Surrender. The truck lurched forward into a blinding wall of white. And I felt it. An overwhelming pressure, a suffocating chill, as if the snow itself tried to pull me from the cab. For what felt like hours, I drove blind through the storm. The snow figure stayed at my side, impossible and relentless. Its smaller constructs multiplied with every turn, following me like a storm-born army. I had no control, no hope. Suddenly, the headlights caught something on the road, a small clearing surrounded by pines. I veered sharply, skidding into the snow. My truck stopped just feet from a frozen pond. The blizzard seemed to pause for a heartbeat. Silence, except for my ragged breathing. I jumped out, hoping the isolation would confuse them. Snow crunched under my boots. The snow figure glided closer, massive, imposing, featureless face still fixed on me. Its arm rose again, and the wind shifted violently, carrying whispers that sounded like 1,000 voices inside my head. I realized then that the snow was sentient, its consciousness tied to the figure itself. It didn't just want me. It wanted recognition, surrender, obedience. I had resisted long enough. I dropped to my knees, shivering, voice barely audible. "I see you." The figure paused. The smaller constructs froze in place. A low, vibrating hum emanated from the snow itself, almost melodic yet deeply wrong. Slowly, the figure lowered its arm. The storm began to calm, the air clearing slightly. But its hollow eyes remained locked on me, never blinking. I understood one terrible truth. The snow doesn't forget. The storm may recede, but it watches, waits, and remembers every face it has ever encountered. And mine was now etched into its memory forever. I survived the night, though barely. I returned to town the next morning, exhausted and frostbitten. Yet the memory of the storm refused to leave me. People asked what happened, and I told them it was just a blizzard, nothing more. They nodded, unaware of what watched from the snowdrifts beyond the tree line. Over the following weeks, I tried to return to normal life. But every time it snowed, no matter how light, my stomach twisted. Every snowfall became an omen. I could feel it watching, analyzing, waiting. The memory of the snow figure, hollow eyes drilling into me, followed everywhere. I stopped going into the backwoods entirely, avoided storms, avoided the places I had loved. I knew now the snow was alive in a way I could barely comprehend. And if you think snow is silent, soft, and pure, you haven't met what I met. Sometimes, in the quiet of winter nights, I hear faint tapping against my windows. Gentle at first, then insistent. When I look outside, I see nothing, but I feel it there. Watching, waiting. I don't know if it will ever leave me or if winter itself is now a prison. All I know is this: the snow remembers, and it remembers me. I'm Caleb Morin, and this is what happened when the snow watched me. My name is Emily Carver, and this happened the summer I turned 24. I had been craving solitude, a break from the chaos of city life. So I rented a small, secluded cabin in Misty Hollow, a remote Canadian town surrounded by dense forest. Locals warned me about the area: strange disappearances, eerie lights, and whispers of something that lived in the fog. I laughed it off. I thought it was just old town superstition. The first evening was peaceful. Mist rolled through the trees like liquid smoke, and the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of red and gray. I unpacked, lit a fire, and settled in with a book. But then I noticed it. Something odd outside the cabin window. A shadow, barely distinguishable through the fog, standing perfectly still at the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought it was another renter or a hiker. But as I focused, I realized there was no movement, just watching. I felt my chest tighten, an unease I couldn't shake. The shadow seemed to flicker, stretching taller and then shrinking, almost as if it were breathing the fog itself. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was a trick of the light and mist. But that night, when the fog crept closer to the cabin, I swore I heard footsteps circling the perimeter. Slow, deliberate, not animal, not human. Something else. I decided to wait until morning, telling myself the daylight would reveal the truth. But as I drifted off to sleep, I could feel eyes watching me from just beyond the fog. Morning arrived, but the unease didn't lift. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and scanned the misty clearing. Nothing. No footprints, no sign of the shadow. Just fog curling around the trees, soft and deceptive. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, a product of loneliness and fatigue. Yet the memory of those dark, shifting eyes refused to fade. The next few hours passed uneventfully. I explored the immediate area, hiking the short trails around the cabin, photographing birds and insects. Still, a strange sensation lingered, like I wasn't truly alone. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made me jump. By evening, the fog thickened, rolling down the hills like a silent tide. I lit the fireplace again, hoping the warm glow would keep fear at bay. But the moment I looked out the window, my stomach dropped. The shadow was back, closer this time, just beyond the tree line. Its form was vague, constantly shifting, and yet unmistakably humanoid. I grabbed my phone, desperate to call someone, but no signal. Not even a single bar. Panic rose in my chest. I tried to breathe, telling myself to stay calm, to remember I was an adult, rational and capable. But as the sun disappeared completely behind the misty hills, I felt the temperature drop sharply, the air around the cabin thick and heavy. Then I heard it, a low, guttural humming, coming from somewhere deep in the forest, reverberating through the fog and directly into my bones. I wasn't alone. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The humming grew louder, reverberating through the fog as if it had a rhythm I was meant to follow. My curiosity fought with fear. I grabbed a flashlight, telling myself I'd at least see what it was. Stepping outside, the mist immediately enveloped me, cold and damp, clinging to my skin. Every step crunched softly over wet leaves and dirt, yet I sensed movement around me. Something gliding silently, keeping pace without sound. I caught a glimpse of the shadow again. This time it emerged from the fog, closer, almost solid, but shifting like smoke. Its humanoid outline pulsed as if breathing the mist. I froze, heart hammering. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaking. No answer, just the humming. Then a rustle to my left. Trees swayed unnaturally, though no wind blew. The shadows split into smaller shapes, moving like a swarm, circling me, dancing on the edge of perception. I stumbled back toward the cabin, tripping over roots, nearly dropping my flashlight. The swarm followed, yet never crossing the threshold of light from the doorway. But their presence pressed against me, cold and oppressive, as if the fog itself had consciousness. I slammed the door behind me, fumbling for locks. The humming continued, penetrating walls and floorboards, a sound that burrowed into my chest. It wasn't just outside, it was inside my mind. I realized then, with a chill I couldn't shake. Leaving the cabin wouldn't save me. I didn't just rent a cabin in Misty Hollow, I had entered its territory. I spent the night on edge, clutching the flashlight and listening to the humming that never stopped. It changed subtly, varying in pitch as if testing me. Shadows seemed to move across walls, flickering in the firelight. Every creak of the cabin made my heart leap. By morning, the fog had lifted slightly, revealing the dense forest beyond. But the shadow was still there, standing just past the tree line, observing silently. My phone finally had signal, but when I tried to call anyone, only static answered. I decided to explore the area despite my fear, desperate for answers. The forest was thick, the fog lingering in pockets between trees. That's when I noticed the signs. Small, deliberate patterns in the dirt and leaves. Footprints that didn't make sense. Too long, too narrow, and sometimes fading mid-step. Something moved through the forest without leaving normal traces. As I followed the trail, I stumbled upon an old stone well, half hidden by vines. The humming was loudest here, vibrating through the air like a heartbeat. And in the mist above the well, the shadow took a new form. Its humanoid shape distorted, stretched, reaching upward like it was tied to the fog itself. I felt a cold finger of dread brush my spine. I realized then that whatever this thing was, it wasn't confined to physical form. It was part of the mist, the forest, the cabin. And it had been waiting for me. Panic surged, but curiosity rooted me in place. I knew running blindly would only make it stronger. I circled the well, keeping my eyes on the distorted shadow. Its form rippled like liquid, stretching and shrinking, yet always humanoid at its core. Then I noticed something chilling. Small tendrils of mist extending toward me, twisting like fingers. I could feel them brushing against my arms, cold as ice, carrying the faint smell of decay. The humming escalated into a tone that seemed almost sentient, a melody of warning or temptation I couldn't decipher. I tried to step back, but the tendrils followed, coiling around my boots and ankles. My flashlight flickered, threatening to die, leaving me in almost total darkness. I fumbled with batteries, heart racing, aware that every second I spent here deepened its focus on me. I turned toward the cabin, desperate to escape the well's influence, and saw something impossible. The shadow now standing on the cabin roof, its elongated form stretching impossibly high, yet remaining featureless. It raised an arm, pointing toward the forest. The tendrils of fog thickened, forming shapes. Hands, faces, and twisted humanoid figures reaching toward me. I understood then. The cabin wasn't safe. The forest wasn't safe. And the mist wasn't natural. It had been drawing me in from the very moment I arrived. I retreated to the cabin, slamming the door and bolting every latch I could find. The fog outside pressed against the windows like fingers, cold and unyielding. The distorted shadow lingered just beyond the tree line, shifting in ways that defied physics. Its head elongating, then shrinking, its limbs bending at impossible angles. Every movement made my stomach churn. I tried to calm myself, to think rationally. I had survived wilderness treks before, faced bears, wolves, and storms. But this was different. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. It wasn't alive in any natural sense. The forest itself seemed to bend around it. As night fell, the fog thickened even more, creeping through cracks in the cabin. I could hear it. Soft, deliberate whispers, like dozens of voices speaking at once, echoing off the walls. The distorted shadow's outline appeared against the mist outside the window, and it began to move closer to the cabin step by step, gliding without sound. My fear gave way to desperate ingenuity. I grabbed my camera, hoping to capture evidence. I clicked a photo toward the window, and the flash illuminated the fog for a brief instant. In that moment, I saw it clearly. Its face, not featureless, but hollow black voids where eyes should be, and a mouth stretched impossibly wide, frozen in a silent scream. Then the flash died. The figure was gone. Yet the whispers continued. It wasn't gone. I couldn't stay inside forever. I had to move, had to escape. But as I stepped into the fog, it was like walking into a wall of ice and whispers. Every step I took seemed guided, funneled by the mist itself. Shapes formed around me, faces, hands, figures stretching and warping with every glance. My mind screamed to turn back, but something deeper, a pull I didn't understand, kept me moving forward. Then I saw the cabin roof again. The shadow was there, taller now, leaning like it was peering into my soul. The smaller figures in the mist swirled around it, forming a vortex of fog and darkness. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me with nothing but the whispering cold. I tripped over roots and rocks, gasping for breath. But the mist followed, keeping pace without sound. I noticed that the ground beneath me seemed different, almost alive, shifting slightly like the forest itself had teeth. Panic overtook me, and I ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, hearing the distorted shadows humming intensify into a screech that vibrated through my chest. I stumbled into a small clearing, a frozen pond reflecting the dim moonlight. The mist thickened here, and the shadow glided onto the ice, its elongated form bending impossibly over the surface. I froze, realizing I had nowhere to go. The fog seemed to pulse with life, swallowing the forest around me. And then, the shadow's featureless face tilted directly toward me, and the whispers became words. You came. Now you belong. I stood frozen on the frozen pond, heart hammering in my chest. The distorted shadow hovered above the ice, the smaller figures swarming around it, forming a whirlpool of mist and darkness. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet my feet refused to move. Then I noticed the pond itself. It wasn't solid. Beneath the ice, the shapes of distorted faces and hands pressed upward from the darkness, writhing silently. I realized the pond wasn't water frozen. It was a mirror, a gateway, a trap. The shadow's elongated hand reached toward me, and a pulse of icy energy radiated outward, knocking me to my knees. I scrambled backward, tripping over snow-dusted roots, my flashlight useless, my breathing ragged. The whispering had become deafening, a chorus of voices inside my mind, repeating one word: stay. I grabbed a jagged branch and swung blindly, as if my fear could fend it off. The shadow paused for an instant, tilting its featureless face, and the mist seemed to hesitate. That pause was all I needed. I bolted toward the edge of the clearing, ignoring roots, snow, and ice. The mist thinned slightly as I reached the tree line, and the chorus faded into low hums. Behind me, the shadow lingered at the pond, waiting, patient, eternal. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of Misty Hollow. The fog finally breaking, the first light of dawn brushing the trees. I reached the town's edge, trembling, exhausted, and gasping for breath. Sunlight pierced the morning mist. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadow was still watching me, its presence embedded in the fog itself. People in town noticed my disheveled state, asking if I had been hiking. I smiled weakly, shrugging, telling them I'd taken a wrong turn. They didn't know. They couldn't know. Misty Hollow was alive in ways no one should ever see. That day, I avoided the woods, staying close to buildings and roads. Yet everywhere I went, I felt the presence of the mist, the shadow, the whispering chorus lingering at the edges of my vision. At night, I couldn't sleep. The whispers returned, softer now. Just enough to remind me that the cabin, the pond, the forest, they hadn't forgotten me. I began noticing fog in odd places, inside alleys, around streetlights, curling unnaturally like fingers, stretching toward me. I understood one terrible truth. Leaving the forest didn't free me. The shadow had marked me, embedded a part of itself into my memory, my essence. And no matter how far I ran, the fog would always follow, waiting for the day I returned. I never returned. But sometimes, when the wind carries mist through the town, I swear I can see a distorted figure, bending impossibly in the distance, waiting silently, humming. Months passed, but the fear never left me. I moved to a different province, changed my daily routines, avoided forests entirely. Yet the whispers came in dreams, the shadow appearing at the edge of my vision, bending and stretching through fog, mist, and reflections. I realized that Misty Hollow wasn't a place you could simply leave. It wasn't contained in a cabin or a clearing. It existed wherever it wanted, carried by the mist, by the memories of those who had encountered it. And now, it had me. One winter evening, I caught myself staring out the window at fog rolling across the street. For a heartbeat, I swore I saw its elongated form glide past the street lamp. Silent, patient, waiting. My stomach tightened as the whispering returned, softer this time, almost gentle, yet unmistakably commanding. You belong. I knew then that my life had been forever altered. The shadow had claimed me, not in body, but in essence. I would never feel truly safe. The fog, the whispering, the distorted humanoid figures, They were no longer confined to Misty Hollow. They were a part of me, and I a part of them. I keep this story now as a warning. If you ever venture into foggy, isolated forests in Canada, remember, Misty Hollow is alive. It watches, it waits, and sometimes it follows. I'm Emily Carver, and this is the nightmare I survived, though I'm never truly free. My name is Lucas Reed, and this happened during a late summer road trip through rural Ontario. I had always loved driving along back roads, exploring small towns, and photographing abandoned places. That day, I stumbled upon a bridge I'd never seen on any map, a narrow wooden span crossing a misty river surrounded by dense forest. The sign read only, "Caution, limited access." Curiosity got the better of me. I parked my car and stepped onto the bridge, admiring the fog rolling off the river below. It was eerily quiet. No birds, no insects, just the faint creak of old timber beneath my feet. I raised my camera, snapping photos of the mist swirling around the railing, when I noticed something odd. The other side of the bridge didn't look like the forest I had approached from. The trees there were twisted, unnatural, their branches curving downward as if bowing to some invisible force. Shadows moved in the fog, far too large and deliberate to be animals. A chill ran down my spine. I considered leaving, but my curiosity, always my flaw, kept me rooted. I took a cautious step forward, and the mist thickened, curling around my legs like smoke. The bridge groaned under my weight, and I could swear it shifted slightly, as if alive. Then I saw it, a figure standing on the far end, completely motionless, cloaked in black mist, watching me. Its face, I couldn't make out, yet I felt it stare directly into my soul. My heart thudded in my chest, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure. It didn't move, yet its presence was overwhelming, oppressive. I stepped back instinctively, but the bridge creaked alarmingly under my weight, as if warning me not to retreat. The mist thickened further, crawling along the wooden planks, curling around my boots. I could barely see the far end of the bridge anymore. Shadows danced in the fog, strange shapes twisting unnaturally. I raised my camera again, hoping to capture evidence, but the lens fogged instantly, obscuring everything. I considered running back, but a strange compulsion held me rooted in place. The figure seemed to pulse with the mist, its form growing taller, limbs stretching impossibly. I realized then that it wasn't entirely humanoid. It was part of the fog, part of the bridge itself. Suddenly, I heard a soft whisper, almost beneath the wind, repeating my name. Lucas. My stomach churned. I wasn't imagining it. Someone, or something, was calling me. Panic overtook caution. I spun around to run back to my car, but the bridge seemed longer, stretching into the fog as if mocking me. Every step toward the beginning brought me deeper into mist that shouldn't exist. The trees behind me looked farther away than when I first parked, and the familiar path I came from was gone, swallowed by the fog. The figure on the far end raised a hand slowly, deliberately, and I felt a force pulling me forward, toward it. I stumbled forward, heart pounding, every step heavy with dread. The fog wrapped around me like a living thing, tugging at my clothes and skin. The figure at the far end of the bridge didn't move, yet I felt its awareness following each movement, almost studying me. Suddenly, the wooden planks groaned underfoot, some cracking sharply. I froze, realizing one misstep could send me plunging into the icy river below. Shadows formed in the fog, elongated shapes writhing like fingers reaching for me. The whispering returned, louder now, urgent, almost pleading. "Come closer. Join us." I forced myself to focus, trying to remember the real world. I glanced toward the misted trees behind me, desperate for an escape route. But the forest seemed impossibly distant. It wasn't just the bridge anymore. It was a trap. The figure slowly raised an arm, and a black tendril of fog extended from it, slithering across the bridge toward me. I stumbled back, nearly falling, and in that instant, the mist swallowed the space behind me. The bridge seemed endless now, stretching beyond reason. My mind raced, thoughts colliding with fear. I realized this wasn't just a haunting. It was a dimension beyond understanding, one that bent reality. My instincts screamed to run, but the bridge had become a liminal corridor, a place between worlds, and I was trapped inside. I forced myself to keep moving forward, taking tentative steps toward the figure. The fog throbbed around me, a living pulse that seemed to synchronize with my racing heartbeat. Every creak of the bridge echoed unnaturally, and the river below roared, though I couldn't see it. As I approached the figure, I noticed details I hadn't before. Its face was a void, black and shifting, with faint suggestions of eyes forming and dissolving within it. The longer I stared, the more my vision warped, the bridge beneath me bending and twisting subtly, as if reality itself was breathing. Then I noticed movement in the fog along the edges of the bridge. Other figures, smaller and distorted, emerging from the mist, crawling along the planks and railing. They mirrored my steps, surrounding me without sound, waiting for me to stumble. A sudden gust of wind slammed into me, pushing me against the railing. I saw for the first time the river below. Not water, but a swirling void, black and endless, reflecting the figures above it. I realized with cold certainty that one wrong step would mean being swallowed by this abyss. The central figure extended both arms, and the mist roared toward me, a living wave. My survival instinct screamed. I knew the only choice was to confront it. I stood frozen, fear gripping me like ice. The central figure's voice, or something like it, echoed in my head. Step forward, or remain forever. My instincts told me to flee, yet the bridge had become a corridor I couldn't retreat from. I forced my legs to move, stepping forward carefully, keeping my gaze on the void where the figure's face should be. The smaller figures in the fog mirrored each step, a silent army guiding me, or perhaps trapping me. Every plank I stepped on felt alive, thrumming beneath my feet. Suddenly, the figure stretched upward, taller than the trees, and the fog thickened, forming swirling shapes. Faces, hands, twisted humanoids writhing in agony. I realized the bridge was feeding off fear, growing stronger the more I reacted. I tried to shout, but my voice vanished in the fog. Then I remembered the camera in my backpack. Clutching it, I raised it and clicked, hoping light or technology could pierce the mist. The flash revealed the truth. The figure was countless shades of darkness, a mass of voids, stretching infinitely in all directions, surrounded by ghostly echoes of previous travelers. The mist pulsed, and the bridge shifted again, curving into a vortex that threatened to suck me into the abyss below. Panic surged, yet I forced myself to take the next step. One step, then another, until I reached the halfway point, where the fog seemed slightly less oppressive. I realized then, escape was possible, but only if I could outsmart the mist itself. I forced myself forward, each step a battle against the fog that seemed alive, curling around my legs and arms like icy serpents. The smaller figures swirled faster, reaching for me, but they avoided touching my feet as if testing me. The bridge beneath me trembled, groaning with unnatural sound, echoing like a distorted heartbeat. The central figure's void-like face pulsed, and I felt an intense mental pressure, thoughts intruding with images of falling, drowning, and disappearing forever into the abyss. I gritted my teeth and pushed past the fear, focusing on the faint light at the far end of the bridge. Suddenly, one of the smaller figures lunged, transparent fingers grazing my arm. Cold fire shot through me, a warning or a curse, I couldn't tell which. I stumbled forward, tripping over warped planks, but kept moving, driven by pure survival instinct. Then I saw it, a faint outline of the far end of the bridge, where normal fog thinned slightly, and the forest beyond seemed tangible again. The central figure raised both arms, and the mist around it coalesced into an enormous, swirling shape, a vortex of black and gray, trying to block my path. I realized then that the bridge wasn't just a place. It was a sentient trap, and the figure had the ability to reshape reality itself. Every ounce of courage I had left was all that stood between me and oblivion. I ran, ignoring the cold fingers of fog brushing my skin, ignoring the shouts in my head and the thrum of the bridge beneath me. The smaller figures swirled faster, forming ghostly hands, trying to pull me into the vortex, but I dodged, leapt, and sprinted with everything I had. The central figure followed, its form stretching impossibly, bending and twisting as if unbound by physics. Its void-like face seemed to stretch toward me, and I felt an overwhelming compulsion to stop, to surrender, to step into the abyss. My hands grasped the railing, the wood slick with condensation. Planks cracked beneath me, but I leapt over the broken sections, barely keeping my balance. The vortex of fog seemed to surge, trying to swallow the bridge whole, yet I kept moving. I finally glimpsed the far end, the trees of the normal forest, tangible and real. The fog thinned slightly there, and I ran faster, every step a battle against gravity, against fear, against the pull of the void. Just as I neared the end, the central figure lunged, extending tendrils of mist that wrapped around my leg. Pain shot through me, but I ripped free, sliding across the bridge planks onto solid ground. I scrambled into the forest, the fog reluctant to follow beyond the threshold, as if the bridge itself rejected its prey leaving. I looked back once, and the bridge had returned to normal, wooden and still. But the memory of the shadow lingered, pulsing in my mind. I stumbled into the forest, chest heaving, fog retreating like a tide pulled by some unseen hand. My legs trembled, and my hands shook from adrenaline and fear. But I kept moving, desperate to put distance between me and that cursed bridge. As I ran, I realized the forest around me seemed wrong. The trees were taller than they should be, their branches gnarled like skeletal fingers. Shadows flitted between them, always at the edge of vision, never fully revealed. I felt the pull of the bridge in my chest, a tether I couldn't sever. Then I tripped, falling into a shallow ditch, and the fog snaked around me again, thick and choking. The whispers returned, softer now, almost coaxing. "You can't leave. Come back." I forced myself upright and ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, following faint sunlight piercing the canopy. Eventually, I reached a clearing where the bridge should have been. But it was gone. No wooden planks, no railings, just the mist curling over a river I barely recognized. It was as if the bridge had never existed. For a moment, relief surged through me. But then I saw a shadow detach from the fog, hovering where the bridge had been, its void-like face tilted toward me, and I felt a wave of fear wash through my body. The bridge may have vanished, but the entity had not. I ran without thinking, branches slashing my arms, mud clogging my boots. The forest seemed endless, twisted, reshaping itself with each desperate step. The whispers followed me, fading and returning, always repeating my name. Lucas, you belong? Eventually, I found a small dirt road. My car was exactly where I had parked it, unchanged, almost serene compared to the chaos behind me. I jumped in, locking the doors, but the engine wouldn't start. The shadow hovered at the road's edge, mist swirling around it, its presence so heavy it pressed against the windshield. I tried to reason, telling myself it was a hallucination, a stress reaction, a trick of the light. But then the mist seeped through the gaps in the car, curling around my legs, cold and alive. I felt it probe my mind, pulling memories, twisting fear into vivid hallucinations. I slammed the car door repeatedly, trying to escape, finally breaking free of the mist. The engine roared to life, as if obeying my desperation, and I sped down the road, the shadow receding but never vanishing. Even now, I feel it sometimes, in fog, in shadows, in reflections. That bridge wasn't just a bridge, it was a trap, a doorway, and it left a piece of itself in me. Months have passed since that night, but I can't forget. I avoid rivers, bridges, and foggy roads entirely. Sometimes, in the corner of my vision, I see a shadow stretching unnaturally, almost human but impossibly tall, and I feel the cold tug of mist on my skin. I've spoken to locals about the area. No one remembers the bridge. Maps show nothing. It's as if it never existed, yet the memory is etched into me like a scar. I've learned the hard truth. Some places exist only to trap the curious, to claim their essence, leaving nothing but fear behind. At night, I sometimes dream of the bridge stretching endlessly into the mist. The figure waiting at the far end, surrounded by countless smaller forms, whispering my name. I wake in cold sweat, heart pounding, knowing the bridge is not done with me. I carry it in my mind now, a permanent reminder that some things are better left unexplored. And sometimes, when the fog curls across a river, I swear I see a dark figure standing where no bridge should be, waiting for the next traveler to stumble forward. I am Lucas Reed, and I survived the vanishing bridge. But survival doesn't mean escape. The shadow, the mist, and the bridge are part of me now, always whispering, always watching. My name is Hannah Sullivan, and this happened during a summer trip to the rugged coastline of Nova Scotia. I had always been drawn to lighthouses, their isolation, their history, and the way they stood as silent guardians against the relentless sea. One evening, while driving along a secluded stretch of coast, I spotted a lighthouse I had never seen on any map. Weathered and abandoned, it loomed over jagged cliffs, its paint peeling and windows dark. Curiosity pushed me forward. I parked my car and approached on foot, the wind whipping my hair and the salt spray stinging my skin. The closer I got, the more I felt the isolation, a palpable tension that made my skin crawl. The lighthouse wasn't just abandoned. It felt alive, as if it had been waiting for me. I stepped inside, the wooden floorboards groaning underfoot. Rusted railings led to a spiral staircase, winding upward into darkness. A strange, almost metallic scent filled the air, and faint scratches echoed from the walls. Shadows flickered unnaturally, as if the light from outside created shapes that shouldn't exist. Then I heard it, a low hum vibrating through the floor, walls, and air itself. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive, pulsing in rhythm with my own heartbeat. My curiosity mingled with fear, but I had to climb. The light at the top promised something, though I didn't know whether it was revelation or danger. As I ascended, a sense of being watched intensified, and in the corner of my eye, I glimpsed movement, something that wasn't my own shadow. I climbed the spiral staircase cautiously, the groaning steps echoing in the hollow lighthouse. Each twist of the railing made me flinch, as if it could suddenly collapse beneath me. The hum persisted, growing louder, vibrating in my chest, syncing with my pulse. Shadows stretched along the walls, moving independently of the light outside, twisting unnaturally like they had their own life. As I reached the midpoint, I noticed old carvings on the walls. Names, dates, and cryptic symbols etched into the wood. Some were fresh, almost recent, though I knew the place had been abandoned for decades. My stomach churned. Had someone, or something, been here recently? Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. I spun around, expecting a person, but there was nothing. The staircase looked empty, yet the hum intensified, now layered with whispers in a language I didn't understand. It wasn't threatening exactly. It was calling, beckoning me upward. I tried to rationalize, telling myself it was the wind, the acoustics of the lighthouse, or my imagination. But the floor beneath me shivered, almost breathing. And I realized the lighthouse itself seemed alive. I gripped the railing and continued upward, heart racing. At the top, the lantern room loomed, faint light glimmering through dust and cracked glass. I reached for the hatch to enter, unaware that what awaited me would change my understanding of reality and fear forever. The hatch to the lantern room was heavy, creaking loudly as I pushed it open. A gust of stale, cold air hit me, carrying a metallic tang that made my nose sting. The lantern room was larger than I expected, circular, with broken glass panes allowing moonlight to illuminate the room in eerie streaks. I saw it then. The light itself was missing. Instead, a black, viscous substance covered the mechanism, undulating like it was alive. I stepped closer, instinct warning me against touching it, yet fascination drew me near. As I leaned over the railing, I glimpsed the ocean below through the shattered windows. Yet the water looked wrong. The waves were black, shimmering like liquid oil, and faint, shadowy shapes swirled beneath the surface. A sudden movement made me spin around. The lighthouse walls rippled, as if they weren't walls at all, but membranes, pulsating softly. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and humanoid, yet composed entirely of the same black substance covering the lantern. It had no face, only smooth void where eyes and mouth should be. Yet I felt it staring directly into me. The hum became deafening, now a chorus of whispers calling my name. The figure extended an arm, pointing toward the open window. And I realized the lighthouse wasn't just abandoned. It had claimed something from the ocean long ago. And now it was claiming me. I stumbled back from the figure, heart hammering. The black substance seemed to pulse, reaching across the floor like living tendrils. My instincts screamed to run, but the hatch behind me slammed shut violently, trapping me inside. Panic surged, and I scrambled toward the corners of the room. Yet the figure moved effortlessly, gliding on the substance as if it were solid ground. A whisper echoed, "Stay. Join the light." My skin crawled. I realized the black mass wasn't just a being. It was a manifestation of the lighthouse itself, a guardian or prisoner of something older and darker than I could comprehend. I searched desperately for an escape route, noticing a narrow catwalk leading around the room's circumference. I ran toward it, leaping over pulsing tendrils that lashed out like snakes. Every step made the hum rise to a deafening crescendo. From the corner of my eye, I saw shapes moving in the darkness. Faint figures suspended in the viscous black, reaching toward the lightless lantern. It dawned on me. These were the remnants of others who had entered, trapped for eternity. I kept moving, clinging to hope, praying that reaching the opposite hatch would save me. But as I approached, the figure turned fully toward me, and for the first time, I saw something truly horrifying. Dozens of faces, distorted and screaming silently, forming within the black mass. I understood then that I was not just facing a monster, it was the lighthouse itself, alive and hungry for those who dared trespass. I leapt across the last of the pulsating tendrils, slamming into the opposite hatch. It creaked and opened slowly, revealing a spiral staircase leading down. I hesitated only a moment. The figure now floating in the center of the lantern room, the black mass writhing and extending like it knew I was leaving. The whispers followed me down the stairs, echoing through the hollow lighthouse. Forever. Forever. My legs shook, my lungs burned, yet I pushed onward. Each step downward felt longer than reality allowed. The walls rippled subtly, reminding me that the lighthouse's structure wasn't entirely physical. It was alive, bending perception and time. When I reached the base, the door to the outside was cracked, letting in cold night air. I pushed it open and stumbled onto the rocky cliff, the wind hitting me like a wall. Behind me, the lighthouse seemed to pulse one last time, black tendrils recoiling into the structure. The figure had retreated, yet I felt it watching, patient and eternal. I ran toward my car, parked along the cliff road, the waves crashing violently below. The lighthouse loomed in the moonlight, abandoned yet alive. A sentinel holding secrets and prisoners I would never understand. Even now, when I see lighthouses along isolated coasts, I feel the pull of that black mass, the hum in my chest, the sensation of being watched. Some places are alive, and some things never forgive curiosity. Days later, I couldn't shake the memory. Even from my home, I could feel the pull of the lighthouse in my mind. Dreams came in black and white, filled with endless spiral staircases, whispering voices, and the sensation of floating in viscous darkness. Each night, the humming returned, just beneath my ears, vibrating through my skull. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was trauma, exhaustion, or overactive imagination. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the distorted faces, the featureless figure, and the black liquid moving like waves frozen in time. I researched the lighthouse, scouring archives and maritime records. It had been abandoned decades ago, a beacon lost to history. Yet locals whispered about disappearances and strange lights. My experience fit too perfectly to be coincidence. One night, I awoke to a soft knock at my window. Heart hammering, I looked outside. A thin fog had rolled in, curling unnaturally along the edges of my yard. And there it was, a faint silhouette, humanoid, composed of black smoke just beyond the glass. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It simply waited, patient, eternal. And in that instant, I understood. The lighthouse, the figure, the black mass. They had marked me. I would never be free. I fled the house immediately, leaving lights, doors, everything behind. I rented a motel several miles away, but the whispers followed. No matter where I went, the low hum persisted, subtle yet impossible to ignore. At night, the black figure appeared at the edge of my vision, dissolving into shadows whenever I looked directly. I began documenting everything: dates, times, sensations, and images from my dreams. In every drawing, the lighthouse towered over me, and the figure loomed inside, endless and stretching into infinity. My life became a series of calculations and rituals to avoid invoking its attention. One evening, I received an unmarked package. Inside was a single photograph, the lantern room of the lighthouse, exactly as I had seen it, with the black figure looming, dozens of faces inside its mass. I hadn't taken the photo. Someone, or something, had sent it. The hum grew louder that night. I could feel the tendrils reaching into my mind, memories twisting into unfamiliar shapes. The lighthouse was no longer just a place. It was a presence, capable of extending its influence across time and distance. I understood then that the figure was patient. It could wait decades if necessary, ensuring the curious always paid their price. I was no longer just a survivor. I was marked, tethered to the lighthouse, haunted indefinitely. I couldn't stay. I moved across provinces, cities, always looking for distance. Yet, each time I passed a lighthouse, even abandoned ones, the hum returned, vibrating in my chest. I avoided the ocean entirely, yet the dreams persisted. Endless spiral staircases, black waves, whispering voices calling my name. One day, I met a local historian who spoke of disappearances tied to the lighthouse. Sailors, tourists, and lighthouse keepers vanished without trace. None of them had escaped fully, and their stories hinted at the same figure I had seen. I realized that the lighthouse didn't merely exist. It hunted those who trespassed. I returned to my notes, drawings, and dreams, trying to decipher the pattern. The black mass seemed aware of my attempts, shifting subtly in my visions. Its patience was eternal. Every thought of curiosity, every memory of that night, strengthened its connection to me. That night, I dreamt of the lighthouse again, closer this time. The figure reached through the black water, tendrils wrapping around me. I woke in cold sweat, heart racing. For a moment, I could feel the pulse of the lighthouse extending into my bedroom. I understood finally. I could never escape. It wasn't about geography. It was about attention, awareness, being noticed by the lighthouse. Once marked, one soul became entwined with a black mass, tethered across time and distance. The dreams escalated. Faces of previous victims appeared within the black substance, silently screaming, pressed against invisible walls of the lighthouse. The black figure whispered constantly. Not words, but a low vibration inside my mind, as if it could reach into thought itself. I began seeing tendrils in reflections, in windows, mirrors, even photographs. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. But then I glimpsed a distorted shape in a coffee shop mirror, hovering behind me, its void face stretching impossibly tall. The black substance moved in sync with my fear, bending space subtly around me. I realized that no distance could save me. The lighthouse had marked me, claiming a piece of my mind, and it would never let go. Even the photographs I took seemed to warp subtly, black shapes lurking in corners that hadn't existed moments before. I knew I could never return to Nova Scotia. Yet the lighthouse would always follow me, patient and eternal, waiting for curiosity to manifest again. And if I faltered, if I allowed myself to look too long, to wander too close, it would pull me back, offering a final, inescapable embrace. Now, years later, I live with the constant knowledge that the lighthouse is patient. I avoid coastlines, rivers, and old buildings, but I still feel it, its presence in fog, shadows, and reflections. The black figure waits for curiosity, feeding on attention and fear. I've learned to never look too long, never explore the abandoned, never question the unknown. But sometimes, late at night, I hear a faint hum in my chest, the same vibration that started in that lighthouse. I see black tendrils in reflections, curling and twisting. I understand now that the lighthouse is more than a building. It is a predator, a sentient entity that can extend its reach across time and space, claiming those who dare trespass. And once marked, one's essence is never free. I keep this story as a warning. Never enter abandoned lighthouses, never follow curiosity into unknown places alone, and never ignore the pull of isolation. Some structures are alive. Some things wait patiently, watching, knowing, waiting for the next traveler who dares approach. I am Hannah Sullivan, and I survived the Forgotten Lighthouse. But survival doesn't mean freedom. The black figure and its lighthouse are a part of me now, patient, eternal, and always whispering. My name is Ethan Moore, and this happened during a solo winter trip to a small town near the Canadian Rockies. I had always loved the quiet of snow-covered forests, the way sound was muffled by thick layers of ice and frost. But that winter, the forest held something I couldn't explain, a cold darkness deeper than the shadows, waiting silently behind every snow-laden tree. I arrived in the town late afternoon, the sky gray and heavy with snow. The locals were polite but distant, their eyes lingering on me a moment too long before turning away. I rented a small cabin on the edge of the forest, planning to spend the next few days hiking and photographing the pristine wilderness. On my first evening, I ventured into the woods. The snow crunched beneath my boots, and the trees stood like frozen sentinels. Everything seemed normal at first, peaceful even. But as I walked deeper, the temperature dropped sharply, far colder than the already frigid winter. The wind stilled completely, leaving an unnatural silence. Then I saw it, a figure, barely visible, standing between two pines about 50 feet away. Its body was dark, humanoid, but elongated, with limbs that seemed too long to be human. It didn't move, yet I felt it watching me, its presence heavy, suffocating. I froze, realizing I had walked into something far older and darker than the forest itself. My body froze despite my thick winter jacket. The figure didn't move, but its gaze, or whatever it was, pressed into me like a weight. Every instinct screamed to turn back, yet curiosity and stubbornness pushed me forward. I raised my camera, hoping the lens might capture it. But the figure seemed to distort in the frame, blurry and impossible to define. The forest around me grew darker, even though it was mid-afternoon. Shadows seemed to lengthen unnaturally, stretching toward me. The snow beneath my boots began to sink slightly, as if something unseen pulled at the ground itself. I realized then that the forest wasn't just cold. It was alive, aware, and watching me. The figure took a step forward, or perhaps I had stepped closer. Time seemed to stretch, each second agonizingly long. Then I noticed dozens of smaller shapes emerging from the snow, subtle and semi-transparent, moving with jerky, unnatural motions. I could barely make them out. Children? Animals? Or something else entirely. Panic surged. I turned to run, but the path I had come from was gone, buried under drifting snow that hadn't been there moments ago. The figure didn't chase me. It didn't need to. The forest itself bent to trap me, to guide me deeper into the frozen shadows. I realized the forest wasn't merely inhabited. It was predatory. And I was its prey. I ran blindly, stumbling over snow-covered roots and rocks. The smaller shapes darted in and out of my vision, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, always moving too quickly for my eyes to follow. The dark figure remained at a distance, motionless yet omnipresent. Every breath came in icy bursts, my lungs burning. I realized that the deeper I went, the colder the air became. Not just freezing, but unnatural, biting into bone and flesh. Frost formed on my eyelashes, my hair, even my eyelashes' tips. Yet the figure never seemed affected. I paused to catch my breath and saw tracks in the snow. Human footprints at first, then elongated shapes I didn't recognize. They crisscrossed the clearing, leading toward an old, abandoned cabin partially hidden by snowdrifts. A sense of dread settled in my chest, yet the cabin seemed to call me. I approached cautiously. Windows were broken, shutters hanging loosely, and the door swayed on rusted hinges. Inside, the smell of decay and ice hit me immediately, a metallic tang that made my stomach turn. Shadows twisted along the walls, and I glimpsed shapes pressed into the frosted glass, faces frozen in silent screams. Then I heard it. A low, resonant hum vibrating through the floor and walls. The dark figure was closer now, just outside the window, its void-like presence growing more tangible. The forest had guided me here, and I was completely trapped. I stepped inside the cabin, my boots crunching on frost-covered floorboards. The hum intensified, vibrating in my chest and teeth. Shadows flickered on the walls, and I caught glimpses of frozen faces trapped in the frost, twisted in silent agony. Something ancient and malevolent had claimed this place long before I arrived. The dark figure moved closer, but oddly, it didn't enter. Instead, it hovered near the broken window, limbs elongated and swaying unnaturally. The smaller shapes advanced toward me, circling, whispering incoherent sounds that chilled me to the bone. I found a fireplace, unused but full of blackened ash. On the mantel were objects partially frozen into the wood, watches, trinkets, photographs, all belonging to people who had vanished, I realized, perhaps trapped by the same force. I picked up one photo, a man smiling, oblivious, standing exactly where I had first seen the dark figure. His eyes were scratched out in the image, yet somehow still staring. A sudden gust of icy wind slammed the door shut, plunging the room into near darkness. The hum escalated into a deafening resonance, vibrating the floor beneath me. The shadows stretched along the walls like liquid, moving independently, reaching toward me. I stumbled back toward the cabin's rear window, my camera in hand, desperate to record evidence. The figure outside shifted slightly, now looking directly at me, limbs stretching impossibly. I realized with horror that it was aware of my every move, manipulating the forest, the cabin, even the air itself. The whispers became clearer. Names. My name. Ethan. Each syllable vibrated directly inside my skull. I stumbled backward, tripping over broken floorboards. The smaller figures darted closer, their semi-transparent forms twisting and elongating unnaturally. Panic made me throw the camera toward the corner. The lens caught movement, but the recording would never capture what I saw with my own eyes. I realized then that the dark figure wasn't just observing. It was testing me. The forest, the cabin, the frozen snow. It all belonged to it. It fed on fear, and curiosity was its invitation. A sudden crack of ice from the window made me spin. The figure was gone. Silence filled the cabin, but I felt its presence behind me, hovering just beyond perception. The smaller shapes froze mid-motion, as if the dark figure had commanded them to pause. I needed an escape. The rear window led to a frozen cliffside, and I jumped through, cutting my hands on shards of glass. Snow engulfed me immediately, muffling my screams. As I slid down the slope, I glimpsed the forest stretching endlessly, dark and alive. The figure at the edge of my vision, watching, waiting, patient. When I reached the base, I thought I was free. But the hum lingered in my chest, and the shadows in the snow shifted toward me. I ran through the snow, lungs burning, hands numb, hearing the whispers echoing from the trees. The smaller shapes flickered at the edge of my vision, darting between trunks, always just out of reach. The forest seemed endless, a frozen maze twisting unnaturally, as if reshaping itself to trap me. I tripped and fell into a shallow depression, the snow covering me like a coffin. Panic surged, but I forced myself to rise. The dark figure emerged ahead, standing still yet enormous, its elongated limbs stretching impossibly high. Its presence pressed into my mind, whispering fear, doubt, and inevitability. I noticed something faint in the snow, footprints my own, but twisted, elongated, leading deeper into the forest. They weren't mine. The forest had marked me, leaving a trail I couldn't escape. Desperate, I followed them blindly, hoping they might lead to safety. The shadows between the trees began to move independently, forming shapes that resembled faces twisted in agony. I realized then that the forest was alive, feeding on every ounce of terror, every heartbeat, every whispered breath. At that moment, the snow beneath me shifted violently, creating a sudden crevice. I slid into it, tumbling down into darkness, unable to stop. The hum reached its peak, vibrating through bone and mind. When I looked up, the forest above me seemed impossibly distant, and the dark figure hovered silently over the edge. Patient, eternal. I landed on jagged ice, cutting my arms and legs, snow pressing cold against my skin. The crevice led to a partially frozen river, dark water swirling beneath a thin layer of ice. The whispers were louder now, chanting my name in a chorus of frozen voices. I tried to climb out, but the ice beneath me cracked, splintering like glass underfoot. I slid toward the dark water, realizing that the forest itself was controlling everything. The snow, the ice, even the river. The shadows above twisted and writhed, forming the same elongated humanoid figure, now closer, its void-like face fixed on me. Desperation overcame me. I grabbed a protruding branch and pulled myself onto a ledge, slipping and scraping painfully. The figure descended slowly, but it didn't need to reach me. Its influence bent reality, forcing the snow, ice, and shadows to guide me back into its domain. I remembered a phrase from an old local tale: "The frozen woods do not forgive the curious." I had laughed at it, but now I understood. I wasn't just lost. I was being hunted by something older than the trees themselves, something patient and eternal, waiting for a moment of weakness. I forced myself to stand, shivering, bleeding, yet determined. Somehow, I had to escape, though the forest seemed infinite, and the figure's presence was absolute, embedding fear into my mind itself. Hours seemed to pass as I scrambled along the riverbank, the snow never ending. Every tree branch, every shadow whispered my name, guiding me deeper into the forest. The elongated figure followed silently, its form stretching impossibly between trees, watching, patient. I stumbled upon an old wooden hunting cabin, hidden beneath snowdrifts. Its roof sagged, windows frozen over. Inside, I found remnants of past victims: clothing, frostbitten tools, and sketches etched into walls. The drawings depicted dark shapes, figures emerging from snow, human forms distorted beyond recognition. A chill ran down my spine. I realized the forest had claimed many before me, twisting them into part of its frozen ecosystem. It wasn't just hunting, it was transforming, feeding on fear, leaving echoes of victims in the snow and shadows. I attempted to barricade the door, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent, vibrating through the floor in my skull. The dark figure appeared at the window, its limbs bending impossibly, stretching to occupy the entire pane. I tried to back away, but the floor creaked and groaned under pressure as if alive. In a moment of sheer terror, I understood that the forest, the snow, and the figure were linked, an ancient entity feeding on curiosity and fear. If I stayed, I would be claimed, and my essence would linger in the frozen shadows forever. I abandoned the cabin, sprinting blindly through the snow. The forest seemed endless, yet the figure didn't pursue. It only watched, patient, eternal. The smaller, semi-transparent shapes circled around me, whispering, twisting, and darting in unnatural ways. I noticed a faint trail of footprints leading toward a distant road. Clinging to hope, I followed them, snow and wind biting at my skin. Every step felt heavier, my limbs numb. Yet the path gave a sense of direction, a cruel promise of potential escape. Then I saw it, a faint flicker of headlights far in the distance. Relief surged through me, but the shadows in the snow grew taller, darker, and more defined. The forest bent subtly, the trees arching to block my path, guiding me away from the road. Panic overtook reason. I pushed forward, ignoring frostbite and exhaustion. The figure appeared closer, hovering above the trees now, enormous, limbs stretching to the sky. It was patient, waiting for me to falter, to lose hope. I realized with horror that the forest didn't need to chase me. Its very presence, the snow, the whispers, and the shadows, all were extensions of the figure's will. Escape was a delicate balance of determination and luck, a test of endurance and sanity. After what felt like an eternity, I burst onto the road, the faint glow of civilization ahead. Exhausted, bleeding, and frozen, I collapsed, gasping for breath. The forest behind me was silent, still, but I knew it was waiting. The figure never pursued me physically, but its influence lingered. Every snow-covered forest I passed afterward made me shiver, the low hum vibrating faintly in my chest. I realized then that the entity didn't need to follow, it only needed witnesses. Curiosity and fear were its hooks. It could reach across distance, embedding fragments of its presence into memory. Years later, I can still feel it in my dreams. The frozen woods, the elongated figure, the semi-transparent shapes. They are part of me now. I avoid forests in winter, avoid snow-covered isolation, yet the whispers return in moments of quiet. I've shared this story not to frighten, but to warn. Curiosity can be deadly, and some forests are alive in ways humans cannot comprehend. The frozen woods are patient, eternal, and always waiting for the next traveler to stumble into their domain. I am Ethan Moore, and I survived the frozen woods. But survival doesn't mean freedom. The forest, the shadows, and the dark figure remain, always patient, always watching, always whispering.